We have now made it to the formal investigation stage in the process. After receiving a formal complaint, an initial assessment determines jurisdiction. The basis for investigation is established, followed by a written notice of allegations. An investigation strategy is developed, interviews and evidence gathering are conducted, and a draft report is created. The Title IX coordinator reviews the draft, and evidence is shared with parties for inspection, and the final investigation report is completed.
Upon receipt of a formal complaint and a determination that the formal complaint falls under Title IX policy, the Title IX coordinator and/or Title IX deputy will send the parties a written notice of allegations that contain notice of the allegations potentially constituting sexual harassment, providing sufficient detail known at the time and sufficient time for a response to be prepared before any initial interview, including 1. Identities of the parties, if known. 2. The conduct allegedly constituting sexual harassment. 3. The date and location of the alleged incident, if known. And 4. The policy provisions the conduct is alleged to violate. A statement that the responding party is presumed not responsible for the alleged sexual harassment until a determination regarding responsibility is made at the conclusion of the formal resolution process. A notice that each party may have an advisor of their choice who may be, but is not required to be, an attorney, and who may inspect and review evidence. A notice that the college prohibits knowingly making false statements and knowingly submitting false information during the resolution process. Notification on the right to contact the Disability Resource Center for assistance with disability accommodations. And the college's prohibition against retaliation. The next step is to move to the investigation. This is where you may come in. A college investigator will conduct a prompt, thorough, fair, and impartial investigation. The investigator will receive annual training on issues of relevance, the definitions in this INWAC's Title IX policy, the scope of the college's programs or activities, how to conduct an investigation, and how to serve impartially, including by avoiding prejudgment of the facts at issue, conflicts of interest, and bias. Investigators will be selected from a pool of specially trained investigators within the Conduct Review Board. That's you. The investigator may be a single trained investigator or a team of investigators working with INWAC's trained lead investigator. The investigator will be impartial and free from any conflict or actual bias for or against the reporting party and/or responding party.
Title IX investigator responsibilities include collecting evidence and interviewing the parties and witnesses, creating a preliminary investigative report that fairly summarizes relevant evidence and providing that report to the parties and their advisors for their 10-day review, creating final investigative report and sending it to the parties, advisors, and hearing officer. We will get deeper into each of these as we go along. Now let's get into some interviewing information. 2 very important things to keep in mind for successful interviews are being prepared and building trust. Here are some ways to be prepared. 1. Understand the allegations. Review the initial complaint and any supporting documentation to fully understand the nature and scope of the allegations. 2. Review relevant policies. Become familiar with the INWAC's specific sexual misconduct policies and protocols, including reporting requirements and investigative procedures. This is Policy 2003, Sex Discrimination, Sexual Harassment, Sexual Misconduct. 3. Identify interviewees, determine who needs to be interviewed, reporting party, responding party, witnesses, and gather their contact information. 4. Before any interview, the individual being interviewed should be informed in writing of the date, time, location, participants, and purpose of the interview. Such notice should be provided with sufficient time for the individual to prepare for the interview. 5. Develop questions. Prepare open-ended and specific questions designed to gather information and clarify details based on the allegations. Open-ended questions encourage detailed narrative responses such as, What are you able to tell me about your experience? Specific questions focus on facts and details to clarify information such as, what were they doing at the time? 6. Secure interview location. Choose a private, comfortable setting conducive to a confidential conversation. For virtual interviews, advise the interviewee to create a similar setting. 7. Arrange for co-investigator, note-taker. Consider bringing a co-investigator or note-taker to assist with the interview process and documentation. 8. All interviews should be recorded. 9. Consider trauma-informed approach. Recognize that some individuals may have experienced trauma related to the incident and adapt the interviewing style to be supportive and non-judgmental. We will cover this in a future section.
Let's build on being prepared and add in building trust. Consider that when an investigator is unprepared, it can appear to the interviewee that the investigator is disinterested, or worse, unqualified. Being unprepared for an interview undermines your credibility with the interviewee. Appear professional in terms of dress, demeanor, professionalism, etc. Remember that you are building or losing trust with each minute. More ways to build trust include: prior to the interview, let the interviewee know who will be in attendance. You don't want to surprise them with more people than they expected. Inform them of their right to have a support person and explain the support person's role. Surprises or misunderstandings undermine your credibility with the interviewee. Conversely, doing things exactly as you say you will and being prepared enhances trust. Trust building begins the minute the interviewee enters the room, physically or virtually. Begin the interview with the interview opening statement. This helps them feel more at ease. Coming up in 2 slides. Consider some basic interviewing techniques. Treat the interviewee ethically and with dignity. Don't go into it with any prejudgment. Every person deserves respect. Build a rapport. Don't interrogate. Help them feel comfortable. Acknowledge difficulty. No judgments formed. Let them know you know how difficult this may be for them. Be compassionate in neutral manner. Focus on active listening, empathetic responses, and avoiding judgmental language or behaviors. It's crucial to validate the individual's feelings without taking sides or making assumptions about their experience. Speak in a curious, non-judgmental tone. Maintain a neutral demeanor and avoid leading questions or accusatory language. Reassure the interviewee that their perspective is valued. Plan out questions, but let conversation evolve naturally. Adjust and adapt when necessary. Some answers may lead to other questions. Continue on that path as long as necessary or as long as the interviewee is comfortable. Use the funnel approach to questioning, open-ended to narrow. Start with questions that allow them to tell their story, then narrow down to specific questions. Avoid leading questions, paraphrasing, asking for character evidence or speculation. Be comfortable with silence. Sometimes silence is necessary to gather thoughts. Establish a timeline, chronology, as much as possible. Keep in mind that trauma may affect memory. Ask the difficult questions. This is a difficult situation, but to get the answers you need, you can't be afraid or embarrassed to ask the difficult questions. Ask, "Can you tell me where she touched you?" Or, "Did his finger penetrate your vagina?" Be aware these questions will be hard for the interviewee as well. Give them time. If they become distressed, ask if they need a break. Get clarification to understand, not make assumptions, especially in relation to terms, phrases, acronyms. Identify witnesses and corroborative evidence. Ask, "Is there anything else?" And, "What questions do you have for me?" Provide opportunity for follow-up and thank the participant.
Earlier, we mentioned the interview opening statements. The opening statements will help ease their tension and start to build trust. After introductions are made, start with thanking the person for participating in the interview. Briefly explain the matter without divulging confidential or private information. Keep FERPA in mind. Mention note-taking and recording. All interviews are to be recorded. Make sure the interviewee knows that. If someone is taking notes, be sure to inform them of that as well. For reporting and responding parties, review the process of the investigation. Let them know that all information is only disclosed on a need-to-know basis. Only the parties, their advisors, the hearing officer, and Title IX coordinator will have the information. Go over expectations of confidentiality, candor, cooperation, and no contact. Explain that they are expected to keep things confidential and are expected to be open honest. If there are no contact orders in place, remind them of those guidelines. Discuss prohibition of retaliation. Explain guidelines regarding advisors' participation. Ask, do you have questions? Are you feeling ready to get started? Let's get into some things to consider when interviewing the reporting party. Begin the interview with broad, open-ended questions that invite the reporting party to share their experience in their own words. Avoid interrupting or leading them. For example, instead of saying, "Did he touch you inappropriately?" ask, "Can you tell me what happened?" This approach helps build rapport and ensures the person feels heard, not judged. It also avoids suggesting or shaping their answers. Do not ask about prior sexual history, except as necessary. Questions about the reporting party's prior sexual behavior are generally not permitted under Title IX regulations, unless such information is directly relevant to proving that someone other than the responding party committed the alleged conduct or to prove consent in a specific instance. Even then, these questions must be handled with extreme care, sensitivity, and legal consultation. Asking about past sexual conduct can feel invasive or re-traumatizing and is only appropriate when legally and procedurally justified. Consider impact of parents, advisors, etc. Take into account whether the reporting party has involved a parent, advisor, or legal representative. Their presence can affect how the reporting party communicates and whether they feel comfortable speaking freely. Ensure the reporting party understands their right to have a support person, but also maintain control of the process by reminding third parties of their limited role, typically support, not advocacy or speaking on the individual's behalf. Handling conflicting statements. Reconciliation. If the reporting party provides information that contradicts previous statements, their own or others, approach discrepancies carefully. Use language like, "Earlier, you mentioned X, but now you've said Z. Can you help me understand that?" The goal is not to accuse them of lying, but to understand their experience more clearly. Memory gaps, trauma, and stress can cause inconsistencies that do not necessarily indicate deception. Handling difficult disclosures. Explain why you need to know. When requesting sensitive or potentially triggering information, always explain the relevance. For example, "I know this may be hard to talk about, but understanding what happened in that moment helps us know how best to proceed and whether a policy violation occurred." This can help reduce distress and clarify that you are not seeking prurient details, but necessary facts. Interview for clarification. Don't interrogate. Your tone and approach should be supportive, not adversarial. Clarifying a statement is different from cross-examining someone. Instead of, "Why didn't you report this earlier?" try, "Can you share with me when you first decided to talk to someone and what influenced that decision?" Focus on clarity, not challenging their credibility. After collecting reporting party experience, seek clarification of facts and information to help determine elements of the alleged violation or other additional evidence: who, what, where, when, how. Use follow-up questions to identify specific factual elements related to the alleged incident. Who was involved, other than the parties? What happened, in their words? Where did it take place? Room, building, campus area. When did it occur? Date, time of day, sequence of events. How did it happen? Context, escalation, communication, force, coercion, consent. Filling in these elements helps establish whether a violation of policy may have occurred. Seek information about responding parties' behavior and communication. Ask the reporting party to describe the responding party's words, tone, actions, and demeanor. This includes how the responding party behaved before, during, and after the incident. Specific examples of communication, text messages, verbal statements, social media posts can provide critical insight into intent, impact, or consent. Exhaustive search for corroboration, even minor details. Look for opportunities to verify aspects of the reporting party's story through external evidence. Even small details, like a text confirming someone's location, a time-stamped social media post, or a witness who saw someone upset, can add credibility or context. Don't overlook seemingly minor corroborating points. They can add up significantly. Identify witnesses, electronic evidence, other sources of evidence. Ask the reporting party to provide names of anyone who might have seen or heard something relevant, been told about the incident shortly after it occurred, interacted with either party around the time of the incident. Also inquire about physical or digital evidence, screenshots, texts, emails, DMs, photos, videos, swipe card access logs, etc. Encourage the reporting party to share anything they believe may be helpful and clarify that all evidence, no matter how minor it may seem, will be reviewed with neutrality.
Here are some example questions for the reporting party. Example 1. Thank you for being here and for sharing what you're comfortable with. To start, what are you able to tell me about your experience? You can begin wherever it feels natural for you and take your time. There's no right or wrong way to tell your story. This opening question invites the individual to describe the incident in their own words without leading or suggesting a specific narrative. Example 2. Sometimes remembering specific sensory details, like what you saw, heard, smelled, or felt, can help paint a fuller picture of what happened. What are you able to tell me about those types of details from your experience? Asking about sensory input can help ground the experience in concrete details that may assist with memory recall and evidence gathering. Example 3. Emotions and physical reactions during and after an event can be really important to understand. What are you able to share with me about how you felt during or after the experience? This question helps the investigator understand the emotional and psychological impact of the incident in the reporting party's own words. Example 4. Sometimes, even if the whole situation is hard to talk about, there are certain moments that stand out clearly in our memory. What are you able to tell me about any specific moments from your experience that really stayed with you? This question helps the person focus on particularly vivid or impactful parts of the event, which may offer insight into trauma or memory encoding. Example 5. When certain things happen, our bodies and emotions often respond in strong or unexpected ways. What are you able to tell me about how you physically or emotionally reacted when he touched your breasts? This explores trauma or stress responses and their effects on the body or behavior at a specific point in time. Example 6. Experiences like this can affect people in many different ways, emotionally, physically, or behaviorally. What are you able to tell me about how things in your life may have changed after this happened, compared to how they were before? These type questions encourage discussion of long-term impact on mental health, routines, relationships, or daily functioning. When interviewing the responding party, be mindful of your language use. Be aware that both verbal and nonverbal language communicate meaning. Maintain a neutral, respectful, and professional tone to help foster an environment of trust and impartiality during the interview. Avoid accusatory or emotionally charged language. Phrase questions and responses in a way that encourages open dialogue and ensures fairness, regardless of the allegations being addressed. Keep in mind there are 2 parts of language, verbal and nonverbal. We talk a lot about verbal language in several sections, but also consider your nonverbal body language. Maintain open, non-threatening posture and facial expressions. Avoid gestures or expressions that could be perceived as judgmental, skeptical, or dismissive. Question phraseology. Structure questions to be open-ended and non-leading. Use clear and neutral language to avoid implying guilt or innocence. Your questions should never be leading. Do not suggest or imply an expected answer. Instead, let the responding party narrate events from their own perspective without influence. Questions should be aimed at getting the responding party's side of the story. Focus on understanding their account of the incident. Ask questions that invite context, reasoning, and personal reflection. Start broad, then narrow. Begin with general questions such as, "Can you walk me through what happened?" Then follow up with more specific questions based on their responses to clarify details. Follow the same structure and approach to questioning as the reporting party interview. Ensure both parties are treated equitably. Use a consistent methodology in tone, structure, and sequence of questioning to maintain fairness and minimize bias. Allow the responding party to give a statement in their own words, uninterrupted. Provide space for them to speak without interruption. This supports neutrality and allows for spontaneous and unfiltered disclosure. Seek exculpatory evidence, information, and/or leads, other witnesses, etc. Ask questions that may lead to evidence or witnesses who could support the responding party's account or contradict the reporting party's version of events. Ask the responding party to explain inconsistencies with known evidence and provide opportunity for the responding party to explain evidence disclosed by the reporting party and witnesses. Present contradictions without judgment and allow the responding party to clarify or provide context. This supports procedural fairness and thoroughness. Ask the responding party about the same types of sensory input or environmental details to test the consistency or plausibility of accounts, such as, "What did you see, hear, smell at that time?" Gently inquire about possible motivations, relationships, or interpersonal dynamics that could contribute to misunderstanding, bias, or misinterpretation on either side. Identify where there is agreement, dispute about what is alleged to have occurred. Pinpoint shared facts and clearly document areas of disagreement. This helps clarify the scope of the investigation and focus the analysis. Inquisitive, not interrogative. Adopt a curious, non-confrontational tone. You are there to gather facts, not to accuse, persuade, or interrogate. The goal is truth-seeking, not adversarial confrontation. Examples of questions might be, instead of asking, "Isn't it true that you bought her 4 shots of tequila that night?" you might ask, "Can you describe whether alcohol was consumed that night?" Or, instead of asking, "Are you sure she said yes?" ask, "What words or actions led you to believe she was consenting to your sexual advances?"
When interviewing other witnesses, questions should be as impartial as possible. Neutrality is key. Initiate conversation by trying to understand the relationship, if any, between the witness and the reporting party, the responding party, or both. Follow the same open-ended approach with narrowed follow-up questions. Pay specific attention to what language you use. You do not want to appear to be overzealous on the one hand, and you do not want to appear to be disinterested on the other. Provide the witness with only the information necessary to respond to a question. Keep them on a need-to-know basis. Don't ask leading questions. For example, instead of asking, "Was Kayla drunk on Saturday when you saw her?" say, "Tell me what you remember about being with Kayla that night." Another example might be, instead of asking, "How long were you and Kayla at Matt's house before going to the bar?" ask, "What did you and Kayla do before going to the bar Saturday?" Witnesses may not participate to speak solely about an individual's character. Some common errors during interviews include assuming the veracity of either party's account at the outset. The investigator must avoid taking sides or assuming that what either party says is automatically true without evidence. Drawing conclusions from testimony without allowing party witness a chance to explain. Allowing confirmation bias to influence the direction of the interview. Confirmation bias is a psychological term for the human tendency to only seek out information that supports one position or idea. Allowing the advisor to take over an interview. Advisors cannot answer questions for the party. They are there for support and guidance. Not asking detailed, specific, difficult questions. We always want to begin with open-ended, but it is usually necessary to ask specific questions to fully understand. Not conducting thorough follow-up reconciliation interviews. Failing to interview potential witnesses, follow up on available information. When capturing interviews and summaries, note the date, participants, interviewer, and start-finish times. Ensure thoroughness by collecting detailed information and maintaining legible notes. Record interviews and confirm the accuracy of notes, recordings, and transcripts. Use verbatim quotes and identifiers for people, and type the summary promptly after the interview.
We will end this section with some information about consent. Consent is often considered in sexual harassment, sexual assault cases, so it is very important investigators and adjudicators understand. As you can see in this cute little graphic, consent is as easy as fries, freely given. Consent must be given without any pressure, coercion, or manipulation. The individual should feel like they have a genuine choice to say yes or no. Reversible. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. An individual can change their mind, even if they previously agreed to something. Informed. People need to know all the relevant details about what they are consenting to. Enthusiastic. Consent should be an enthusiastic yes. It's not just the absence of a no, it's a positive and excited agreement to participate. And specific. Consent is specific to a particular activity. Saying yes to one thing does not imply consent to something else. Individuals may perceive and experience the same interaction in different ways. Therefore, it is the responsibility of each party to determine that the other has consented before engaging in the activity. Sexual activity with someone known to be mentally or physically incapacitated, or based on the circumstances. Someone who could reasonably be known to be mentally or physically incapacitated constitutes a violation of INWAC policy. Incapacitation is a state where someone cannot make rational, reasonable decisions because the person lacks the capacity to give knowing consent, to understand the who, what, when, where, why, or how of the sexual interaction. Alcohol or other drug use, unconsciousness, or blackout is an example of incapacitation. INWAC policy also covers a person whose incapacity results from mental disability, sleep, involuntary physical restraint, or from the taking of rape drugs. Proof of consent or non-consent is not a burden placed on any party involved in a formal complaint. Instead, the burden remains on the college to determine whether its policy has been violated. The existence of consent is based on the totality of the circumstances evaluated from the perspective of a reasonable person in the same or similar circumstances, including the context in which the alleged misconduct occurred and any similar and previous patterns that may be evidenced. Because there is a lot of information in the investigation section of our training, to keep sections short, we divided it into 2 parts. Next, we will cover weighing evidence and report writing,